When we were kids and you had a disagreement with a friend, often parents would say something to the effect of challenging us to be the bigger person, meaning be the one to make peace, let it go. It wasn't really that important. Now, as often the case, we don't really grasp the wisdom that they had for us for quite some time. But for God's people, not only is that wisdom, but we should be the one taking the leadership role. And there are actually really cool, selfish reasons to take that leadership role. Obviously, there are some things that are non-negotiable. The lordship of Jesus Christ, for instance. But so often, the issues that separate us really aren't that important. We can get into disagreements over, does God heal? And if he does, how does he do it? And we can become so convinced we have the answer that we can't accept someone who sees things a little bit differently. Now, here's an interesting concept. Can we both see things differently beyond Jesus and actually both be right? And as I said, there are selfish reasons for us to take that leadership role. But before we do, Romans 14 tells us to accept other believers who are weak. And it gives very specific examples. It talks about those who are full of faith can eat anything, and others have a more sensitive conscience and can only eat vegetables. Or one celebrates one day over another. And we see that today in churches. Some celebrate on Saturday, some on Sunday. But it goes on, and God says, but each, if they approach it fully convinced, full of faith, they're accepted by God. So in other words, we both can approach it a bit differently and both be right. Now, why is this important for God's people? Well, first off, we're going to spend eternity together. Let's get along now, right? And as God's people, as believers, what do? When we allow these wedges to come between us, we spend so much time wasted in frustration. But also, we miss out. So often when I'm asked to speak at universities, one of the things I always share with young people is get to know people not like yourself. See, we all have a natural tendency to associate, to congregate with people similar to us in whatever way. But what I share is getting to know people not like yourselves. What happens is over time you come to realize how they enhance your life. They enhance your life, your success, your relationship. See, God doesn't give any of us all the answers. He gives each of us different insights because he wants us to walk and live in unity. And for God's people, when we allow that wedge to come between us, we're missing out on wisdom and insights that God has revealed that can enhance our life, our calling, our purpose in him. So ultimately, for no other reason than out of pure selfishness, we should be the ones to take a leadership role and to reach across and build a bridge, even on things that we don't necessarily agree on. Years ago, I was in Alaska, Kenai, Alaska, as a matter of fact, and I got invited to a pastor's breakfast. And different guys hosted it. And they were all very different, but they found a way to walk together. And I'll never forget at this breakfast, the one guy who was hosting that week introduced him, and he said, "My name's Jim, and I'm not charismatic." And his point was kind of tongue-in-cheek, hey, we're different, but we all get together and we walk together in unity. You know, going back to Romans 14, it tells the one who's full of faith, able to eat anything, not to despise, not to look down on the one who's weak and eats only vegetables. And ultimately, as leaders, as God's people, if we can't take the leadership role, if we can't be the one to build the bridge, then really, which one of us really is the weaker vessel?